Once upon a time, in the quiet village of Ekete, there lived a young man named Oke. He was the only son of his parents, who loved him dearly. Though they were poor, Oke was admired by everyone for his handsome looks and strong body. But their poverty often left him with little to eat. Every market day, Oke would go to the marketplace with an empty bag, picking up leftover corn, yam peels, and anything edible after the traders had gone home. In Ekete, there was a powerful king named Ochuko, who ruled with wisdom and strength. He was old, with grey hairs and a big belly, but he was respected by his people. King Ochuko had 3 daughters, with his youngest wife, Queen Onome, but he was unhappy because he had no son to inherit his throne. He loved Onome dearly, but wished she could give him a male child. Queen Onome was young and beautiful, with skin as smooth as fresh palm oil and a smile that could charm even the coldest heart. But deep down, she was not happy in her marriage. She felt lonely, for she did not love the old king as much as he loved her. She longed for a younger, stronger man to warm her heart. One day, as she sat by her window, she told her loyal maidservant, Ekete, to search the village and the marketplace for a young man who could make her heart flutter. Ekete obeyed and searched everywhere, but none of the young men caught her eye. Just as she was about to return to the palace, she saw Oke bent over, picking up yam peels in the empty market square. His broad shoulders and firm arms caught her attention. She knew at once that he was the one. Ekete quickly approached him and said, "My mistress, the queen, has sent for you. She says you are the most handsome man in Ekete, and she wants to see you tonight." At first, Oak was afraid. "Why would the queen want to see me?" he asked. "Do you not know the king will kill me if he finds out?" S smiled and said, "Do not be afraid. The queen will keep you safe. Come to the palace at night, and I will show you the way to her chambers." After much persuasion, Oke agreed. That night, with his heart beating fast, he went to the palace. Ekete led him through a side door and into Queen Onome's private chambers. Onome was waiting for him, dressed in her finest beads and wrappers. When she saw him, her eyes sparkled with admiration. "You are even more handsome than I imagined," she said, taking his hand. Oke was shy at first, but Queen Onome made him feel comfortable. She offered him food and new clothes, and soon he was laughing and talking with her. That night, she begged him to stay, promising that the king would never find out. Oke stayed, and for 2 weeks they shared secret moments together. But Oke began to worry about his mother, who was alone at home. "I must go and see my mother," he told Onome. She was sad to let him go, but agreed. Before he left, she secretly sent 10 servants to carry gifts of yams, tobacco, salt, and cloth to Oke's mother. She also sent 300 rods of cowries, a fortune in those days. When Oak arrived home, his mother was overjoyed to see him, but she was also worried when she heard about his relationship with the queen. "My son," she said, "this is dangerous. If the king finds out, he will not spare your life." Oak promised to be careful. He stayed with his mother for a month, helping her on the farm. But Queen Onome missed him terribly. She sent Ekete to fetch him again, and Oke returned to the palace under the cover of darkness. This time, Onome came up with a clever plan to protect Oak. She told King Ochuko that Oke was her long-lost cousin. She said, "My king, Oke is family, and he is very hard-working. He can help us in the palace and on the farms." The king was pleased. "If he is your cousin, then he is family," Ochuko said. To show his favor, the king gave Oak large plots of land to farm and assigned him servants to help. Oke became rich and respected in the village, but he and Onome continued their secret affair, sneaking into each other's arms whenever they could. Months passed, and the queen began to notice changes in her body. She felt weak in the mornings and had strange cravings. One day, she called Es and said, "I think I am with child." Isi clapped her hands in excitement. "This is wonderful news, my queen. The king will be so happy." But Onome's heart was troubled. She whispered to Es, "I think Oke is responsible." Aesig gasped but said nothing. The queen placed her hands on her belly, wondering what the future would bring. And so, the story of Queen Onome, Oke, and King Ochuko took a new turn, leaving us to wonder what would happen next. 9 months after, Queen Onome gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The entire village of Ekete celebrated the news, for King Ochuko finally had the male heir he had longed for. The king was overjoyed, lifting the baby high above his head and declaring, "This child is a blessing from the gods. My kingdom is secure." The king named the boy Ochuko Jr. after himself and doted on both the child and Onome. To show his gratitude to the gods, he built a grand shrine and offered sacrifices of yams, goats, and even cows. To Onome, he gave fine wrappers, gold jewelry, and rare coral beads. To Oke, whom he still believed to be Onome's cousin, he gave more land, slaves, and even a small house close to the palace. But deep in her heart, Onome knew the truth. The boy was Orc's son. She shared this secret only with Es, her loyal maid, and Orc himself. They swore to keep it hidden, for they knew that if the king ever found out, it would mean certain death for all 3 of them. As years passed, the king became more and more attached to Ochuko Jr., teaching him the ways of leadership and preparing him to one day rule the kingdom. "You will be a strong king, just like me," he often told the boy. Meanwhile, Onome and Oke's forbidden love continued to burn. Though she played the role of the devoted wife in public, in secret, she and Oke found ways to be together. Late at night, after the king had fallen asleep, Onome would sneak to Oke's quarters, or he would find his way to hers. Esse acted as their lookout, ensuring no one discovered their affair. The king, unaware of their betrayal, showered Oke with even more favors, praising him as a hard-working and loyal family member. Oke's newfound wealth and status made him one of the most respected men in Ekete, but his heart belonged only to Onome. One fateful night, Onome couldn't resist the urge to see Oke. She waited until the palace was silent and slipped out of her chambers. Clad in a simple wrapper to avoid attention, she moved quickly through the dark corridors to Oke's room. But unknown to her, a palace guard, Idafe, had been watching her for weeks. That night, he followed her quietly and stopped outside Oke's room. From the shadows, he heard their whispers, followed by the unmistakable sounds of passion. Edef's eyes widened with shock. He realized the truth, but said nothing at that moment. Instead, he waited for Onome to return to her chambers before confronting her the next morning. "Your Highness," he said with a sly grin, "I know your secret. I saw you last night with Oki, and I heard everything." "If you don't want me to tell the king, you must give me something valuable. Gold, land, and money." Onome's heart raced, but she remained calm. "Come back tonight," she told him. "I will have your reward ready." Edafe nodded, thinking he had outsmarted her. That evening, Onome told Oke and Is about the guard's threat. "If he tells the king, we are finished," she said. We must act quickly. They devised a dangerous plan. Onome invited Ekete to her chambers that night, promising him riches. When he arrived, she greeted him warmly and poured him palm wine. As he sat, savoring his victory, Oke emerged from the shadows with a machete. Before Oke could react, Oke struck him down. The guard's lifeless body lay on the floor as Onome screamed loudly, drawing the attention of other guards. When they arrived, she pointed at the body and said, "This man tried to force himself on me. Oke heard my cries and came to my rescue." The guards, loyal to the queen and terrified of her influence, believed her story. They carried Idafe's body away, and the matter was reported to the king. When Ochuko heard what had happened, he praised Ochuko for his bravery. "You have saved my wife's honor and protected my family," he said. "You are truly loyal." Onome and Oak exchanged a secret look, knowing they had narrowly escaped disaster. But their forbidden love had now claimed a life, and the stakes were higher than ever. Years passed in the kingdom of Ekete, and Queen Onome's son, Ochuko Jr., grew up as the beloved crowned prince. The king, Ochuko, adored his son, showering him with wealth and preparing him to ascend the throne. But deep inside, Onome carried a heavy burden. She knew her son was not the king's true heir, and this secret kept her awake at night. Her worries deepened when Adiri, the king's first wife, who had been barren for years, suddenly gave birth to a healthy baby boy named Efe. The news spread like wildfire, and the entire village celebrated the arrival of another prince. For Onome, however, Efe's birth was a disaster. Her son's claim to the throne was now in jeopardy. "What if the truth comes out?" she whispered to Ese one night. "If the king discovers Ochuko Jr. is not his blood, we are finished. My son will lose everything and I will be put to death." Eseba tried to calm her. "The king is old and sickly. Focus on ensuring that Ochuko Jr. remains the only choice for the throne. No one must ever know the truth." But Onome's mind was restless. The people of Ekete believed that their sacred crown had the power to reject anyone unworthy of it. This belief haunted Onome. She worried that when the time came, the crown might reject her son, exposing their secret. One afternoon, little Efe was playing outside the palace, chasing butterflies. Onome watched him from a distance, her jealousy boiling over. She decided that Efe had to be eliminated. She called Ise and said, "Prepare the fish with the strongest poison you can find. We must get rid of that boy before he grows older." Ise hesitated, but eventually obeyed. The poisoned fish was prepared, and Onome approached Efe with a sweet smile. "Come here, my dear," she said, handing him the fish. "Eat this. It's very tasty." Efe reached out to take the fish, but as he held it, it slipped from his small hands and fell to the ground. Before anyone could react, a palace dog pounced on it and ate it. Minutes later, the dog collapsed and died, its body foaming at the mouth. Onome's heart pounded in fear, but no one else had seen what happened. Efe, too young to understand, ran off to play, oblivious to what had occurred. The incident shook Onome, but it did not deter her. She remained determined to secure the throne for her son. As the years went by, King Ochuko grew old and frail. His health deteriorated rapidly, and soon the entire village was praying for his recovery. But the gods had other plans. One cold evening, the king passed away, and Ekete was plunged into mourning. After the burial rites were performed, preparations for the coronation of the new king began. as the eldest son, Ochuko Jr., was expected to inherit the throne, but whispers of Efe's legitimacy as the king's true blood began to spread. The village elders, unwilling to overlook tradition, decided that both boys must undergo the sacred coronation ritual to determine who the gods favored. When it was Ochuko's turn to wear the sacred crown, something shocking happened. The crown fell off his head, not once, but 3 times. Gasps filled the air as the villagers murmured among themselves. "The crown has rejected him," an elder declared. "This is an abomination." Chaos erupted in the palace. The people demanded answers, and the village priest was summoned to consult the gods. After offering sacrifices, the gods revealed that someone in the palace had been hiding a terrible secret. The guilty one must step into the sacred circle of truth, the priest announced. There, the truth will be revealed. The villagers gathered around the sacred circle. The priest pointed at Onome. "You, Queen Onome, must step inside." Onome's knees trembled, but she had no choice. As soon as she entered the circle, her body stiffened, and she began to speak uncontrollably. "It is true," she cried. "Ochuko Jr. is not the king's son. He is Oke's child. Oke and I have been lovers for years. We lied to the king and the people." The crowd gasped in horror. The priest pressed further. "What else have you done?" Onome confessed everything: the poisoned fish meant for Ife, the lies, and the murder of the palace guard. The people of Ekete were furious. The elders called for immediate judgment. Ake was dragged to the village square and beheaded before the crowd. Onome, Ese, and Ochuko Jr. were banished to the evil forest, a cursed place where the spirits of the damned roamed. After the dust settled, Efe, the rightful heir, was crowned the new king of Ekete. This time, the sacred crown sat firmly on his head, a sign that the gods had chosen him. The people celebrated, singing and dancing as the young king ascended the throne. Order was restored, and the village of Ekete moved forward, knowing that justice had prevailed. And so ends the tale of betrayal, jealousy, and the power of truth.